This is Good Girl Gone Human, an ongoing conversation that serves the frequency of rehumanization. We believe that in striving towards being good and away from being bad, we can lose touch with our humanity and uniqueness. Our hope is that in expanding our capacity to accept our own humanity, we expand the capacity to accept and hold each other's humanity as well.
We welcome uncertainty and questions with curiosity. This is not a roadmap for the right way to be human. We hold tenderly how seductive and human it is to reach for a formula that will provide a sense of certainty and safety. This is not that place, but rather a place for dropping into our big, messy questions.
This isn't just for the recovering good girls out there, but for every human who desires to peel off the layers that hide the wholeness of who they are.
We want to tell the stories of how messy and complicated and beautiful it is to find ourselves in the aftermath of this shedding. There is space for your story, and we want you to join us on this journey of rehumanization. Hey, Holly.
Hi, Kristina.
Hi, humans.
Hi, humans. We're here.
We're doing it.
We're doing it. We're starting a podcast.
Like it just started right now.
Like right now. How do you feel about that?
I'm excited.
Yeah.
And nervous.
So nervous.
And ready.
We could feel all the things at the same time.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
I think we feel this way because we've been talking about this for so long.
Yeah.
And it's felt like our own little secret conversation. And now we have been really protective about it while it's been incubating. And now we're saying, here it is. And we want you to hear what we're saying now.
Yes. So it matters to us. And there's all these jittery feelings. Yeah. And how very human of us.
Truly.
You know?
I know.
And isn't that the point of what we're doing here?
It truly is. I think that it's noteworthy to take a moment to be like, oh yeah, I'm feeling human, excited and scared.
Yeah.
All the parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you to everyone being here with us and witnessing us.
Yes.
In the newness.
Yes.
In the nerves.
And letting us be human.
Letting us be human. Yeah, please. Let us be human.
We demand it. Just kidding.
I love it.
Okay. What are we here to talk about? I mean, why are we so excited?
Why are we so excited? Good Girl Gone Human, the podcast. It feels like the podcast is just the medium for this really deep, rich, far-reaching conversation we want to start and put out there. It's conversations we have privately, and it's really a nod to our individual healing journeys for the past, decade. And so we're here to start an ongoing conversation about not really what it means to be human, but this idea that we often put ourselves in these big bucket categories of good or bad. And I personally have witnessed myself, witnessed myself not noticing. It's taken some time to observe that I oftentimes exist in this mindset of I want to be good. I want to not only be good, but be perceived as good. And what that is a sprint away from being seen as bad and being bad, this fear of actually being bad. And the language that I've come to really find grounding is that feels dehumanizing. If I'm always sprinting away from being bad and it being a vague feeling, this very black and white, what even is bad, which is part of this conversation that we're starting here, this sprint away from being bad towards being good. So a lot of, I think what we want to do here is, let's slow down and unpack that. What if humanity is a spectrum? What if we're not good or bad? We're the whole spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think as we started talking about this, we realized how much we were doing this work separately and how it overlapped. And so it's fun to hear you talk about it because I'm yes, that's the word for the thing that I was feeling, where I spent my whole life. I mean, the healing journey has amped up the last few years, but my whole life was spent trying to be good. And so that programming really is deep. It's deep. And you could call it a lot of things, like being an Enneagram 1, being an eldest daughter, being whatever, pick your label. But there's a lot of things that made me feel like that was the thing that made me worthy. And so it's a really tight line to walk on, to feel like if I make a mistake, what am I now? And now we're getting this like, that dehumanizing word is so important because it's like, oh, what am I now? I'm human.
Yeah.
And this idea of perfection is fake anyway. And the cost of it is everything, and I think that's what I'm realizing. The dehumanizing part is that I was cutting off these parts of myself for the sake of belonging, for the sake of worthiness. And now I'm just starting to realize that those parts that I was cutting off, the ones that maybe felt bad, there's that like bad language, those are important too. They needed space. Yeah. They needed to be seen. And the more I was trying to like shut them down, the pressure cooker was like getting turned up,
Absolutely. I could totally relate with that. I love that you used the word programming, because it kind of took me back to like, why are we spending like our time creating this podcast? It's like, these are deeply ingrained patterns that we need each other to really reflect back to each other, our own humanity, to become more real. It's like when you're trying so hard to be good, there's like this sense of not feeling real. And when somebody could be like, hey, I see you working hard. I see you had a bad day. I see you, disappearing into service towards others to be good. Can we slow down? Can we like be with each other? And I love the belonging piece you brought in too, is the reason why I feel like this is such an important conversation that will be ongoing and have so many layers to it. That's like the point of bringing it to a podcast space. There's so much to unpack here. But that the reason why we get stuck in this program and sometimes don't even notice it is there's a risk. Like the risk of not being seen as good, like you could lose belonging in certain spaces. I think that is what the process I've begun in myself, and I've seen you begin in yourself too, or we've been on this journey, is like, can we expand a little bit more into our humanity? And when we do that, we're able to do that for other people too. And I'm just really feeling the weight of like, this is way oversimplified, but when you look out in the world, it's like we're all have our own definition of good, right? What even is good? I think that's why I want to put the label good down and embrace human, because like we all have a different idea. So then if I'm trying to impose on you my definition of good and you're doing that to me, then we're all just like in our little boxes, like afraid of each other.
So afraid.
So afraid.
Well, and I think it's so humanizing. I love that thought of like, what does good even mean? Because, we have some fundamental high control religion in our background. And so that might look different for us than someone who maybe like is coming from, this could touch so many things. It touches everything, but like an athlete and like what did good mean for them, and like being really rigid with their body and hard with their human experience, or like those kids that were in the gifted program in school and now their anxiety is really high. Like it's not just about like good on some morality scale. I think it's like, what is good? What is a good life? Like it really is so expansive.
Yeah.
And it does separate us when we are trying to put each other in a scale. Like, am I good or bad?
Yeah.
And that's where that belonging piece and the risk that you're talking about is really high, because belonging is everything.
Absolutely.
It's the reason we try to be good, really, at the end of the day.
So true. So it's like what we want to explore here is like, what would happen if like, well, first individually, but dreaming big here collectively, we like put down this like these labels of good and bad and embraced our own humanity. Like, could we still belong to each other? Are we still connected to each other? What happens when you leave like your own internal rigid system? And I like that you expanded kind of like, because we're both coming from like leaving high control religion. Like, no, this expands way beyond that. everyone belongs to this conversation. And the way that you could see yourself in this conversation is really like the work of introspection and like self-awareness, which is, what is my own good programming? And one note of that is like, good girl gone human. We're good girls. We're covering good girls. But this isn't just for the ladies. Like, this is for all humans. Mm-hmm. Everyone is welcome. But like doing that own deep internal work of figuring out, where am I like holding myself hostage? Where am I stifling my expression? Where am I dampening my desires in the name of being good?
Yeah.
And how can I reclaim some of that? And then what that does is like, that is very much like a radical responsibility job. We each unique individually have that job. But where I think a lot of like the self-help and even therapy world, it could be like an isolating journey. So what we wanted to do in this podcast is like expand it to like, okay, you and I and a lot of the people we know and love like are on this journey. Like, can we like expand to bring it to like a community care space? Like, how do we embrace each other so that there is this belonging as we are holding our own perspectives and desires? Like, what happens when something that I really care about, an opinion that I actually feel very strongly about, is different from yours?
And we have that. We have that. You know, we have those differences. And that's part of what I love about our dynamic, you know, is that we get like the rubber meets the road and what we're saying, where it's like, oh, your system is different than mine. And there can be this like, what do we do with this information? And it's like, oh, wait, we're both just humans having a human experience. And it's really expansive. And I think the other cool thing that's come up as we've been talking about it is that we've seen the way that like, I don't think we're sitting here going, aren't we so smart? And like, isn't this so revolutionary? Like, wow, instead of being good, we could try to be human. It's part of something bigger. And once we started speaking about it with each other, I mean, we laugh about how many things we see
it everywhere,
that are on this frequency.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how we kind of talk about it, is that it is something bigger than us. And it's not some grand idea that we have come up with. We talk a lot about Liz Gilbert's like big magic, right? Like this thing is its own inspiration. And so we get to partner with it. Yeah. And that feels exciting. Do you want to tell everybody like how we got here, like with the podcast? And because that kind of ties into just like tapping into the frequency, I think, too.
Absolutely. So how this started actually was, it was going to be my solo podcast. And I'll just say up front, I'm so glad to be doing it with you and that it's not that. But I found myself in a place where, sort of what I just spoke about, where I was like deep in this healing journey and it was pretty isolating. And I am, you know, in my good girl roles of stay-at-home mom and wife and love my kids, love my life, and also feeling like I have this voice that's been stifled and I want to share, and I have all of these tools I want to use and bring to people. Like you'll hear me, I'm a human design enthusiast. You'll hear me like talking about that. And like there's so many different like tools and ways we move through the world that we'll bring to this space. But I was tapping into something larger that like, I don't want to just find a new system to be a fundamentalist about, like human design, astrology, even like psychology, like whatever.
Healing. Yeah.
Anything. Healing can be quite religious sometimes. Yeah. So I was just tapping into like, can I just be me and matter as me and use these tools, but not in a dogmatic way? Because what I was noticing in myself is you can leave the high control religion. The fundamentalism is in here. So this is an inside job. So I found myself with my diet, with therapy, with healing, it was like a new religion. So I just started to like explore, like for me, I love the word differentiation, to put down the good, bad labels. What does it mean to be human? It means to be me. So like another way to say it is like to be human is to be the most Holly I could be, because I do, you know, leaving religion behind, we're both very spiritual. So I do believe I came here for a purpose. So like, what does that mean? And if I forsake that by trying to be good, I don't want to miss out on like my holiness. Anyway, back to how the podcast was born. It came out of this deep desire to share my voice and to like fight really hard to believe my voice mattered. And it was this beautiful experience where like the name Good Girl Gone Human just kind of like dropped in one day. And to me, it felt like a beautiful way to pull together all of my different interests, which is like, I don't know, talking about depedestalizing musicians and artists and, you know, these other systems I'm taking on, not making them my new dogma or my new religion. Like I can pull all these things together and like bring in guests that can add richness to this conversation. So there I was, I had this Google Doc and I just like all these ideas were just pouring out of me. It was very much Liz Gilbert, Big Magic styles. And the creativity just was like pouring out of me, and I like set up my little closet to be my little podcast studio, and it was great. And then just all of a sudden it wasn't. Life just was lifing, and I just lost all momentum for it. And that's a longer story of just being hard on myself. Like, can't I just, you know, I just like needed to believe my voice mattered, and I just like wasn't so sure anymore. And fast forward to like, I just kind of like bravely let it sit. I'm like, it felt like a complete, like when you were saying frequency, that really is like, there's this frequency I tapped into that isn't unique to me. It belongs to everyone, but I want my perspective and my voice on it. And I believe it, I picture it as a river. Like there's this river and like we need it. The land needs it. And it was like I had this moment of like, I'm going to hop on the river. And so I'm on the river, but then I'm like, I don't know, I'm alone around. And I'm just floating around. Yeah. And then, you know, there was this, it's funny. We joke about it because like, I don't even know how it turned into a collaboration, but it was so seamless. It was so meant to be. It came from like you coming over, honestly, to take care of me one day because it was a really hard season. And you were talking about some things that you were doing, and like all of a sudden there was this feeling, this is all I remember, this feeling between us of like, I was like, you know what, Kristina, when I made my Google Doc, you were like the first guest I put on it, and I just like kept picturing you like talking to you. And so that's interesting. And you're like,
that is interesting.
That's some good data. And then like, I don't even know, it was just like a flurry of voice messages after that of like, we're entering into the era of collaboration is what you called it. And as it just like, it felt like it like just like, it was like a snowball, like it like just snowball.
Yeah. It just
went
off.
It just took off.
And it grew.
It grew.
The snowball thing is like all of a sudden it was like growing and changing in a way, but like taking a new form.
Yeah. And it felt like it made all the sense in the world to share it with you. And I remember thinking like, Kristina's like the poster child for Good Girl Gone Human. And I thought it was a funny thing to say to myself because I'm like, wait, I'm the poster child because like this is my thing. But it was just it was so meant to be. And it's just the sweetness of like opening this up to a collaboration. It's kind of what I was saying before. It's like, oh, I'm not alone and isolated. I have to figure out how to share my voice on my own and fight for this belonging. It was like this softness and this like giddy excited and this like, how much sense does this make? And it's been really fun. And I'm so glad that you're doing this with me.
I'm so glad that I'm here. And honestly, I think I remember that conversation where I was over at your house but there is this blur. There's kind of this like void in between, like, that would be kind of cool, right? And then suddenly we were voice texting all these ideas, and it was like a yes. Where one day I remember actually you said like, are we doing this? We had to like have a moment because we were talking about it like we did. We had to like actually say, I think we are doing this. And you said to me like, you're the poster child of Good Girl Gone Human. And I got it. Like I get it because my life, and especially the last couple of years, it has been that. And I didn't have that language for it. And it felt so good. And that was some of that belonging part too, was like, oh yeah, this thing I'm doing, which can feel really isolating. My community has shifted and changed, and there's been loss and there's been gains, but it was like, oh yeah, the thing I'm doing, this work that I'm doing matters, you know, and that actually someone sees it, like Holly sees it. And so like shifting into that era of collaboration was so important for this whole message, because if we're talking about this risk that comes from trying to be seen as good, the like letting ourselves be seen as bad, really, actually, that's the risk. And then the risk is that I lose my place in this belonging or in this community. We've actually both experienced that.
Yeah.
So now there's this healing and like, okay, I get to be like, I disagree with you, or like, no, that doesn't feel good to me. And you get to be like, cool. And there's not this like, we can talk about it, but there's not this risk that I'm going to lose belonging, because I belong because I am a human. And that is like that inner work that we've both done and continue to do. We catch each other all the time. And I think when we say this touches everything, to me, it's like, you've caught me. That sounds like something more intense, but it's like, you'll stop me in my tracks sometimes and be like, I think you are maybe trying to be good at being a human now.
We'll catch ourselves making this our new,
like, it's a new thing. We
Yeah.
can't not be fundamental.
Yeah.
No, I think it's been really sweet to have the language. And so it feels really important to have this conversation, because it's really isolating to start to do this work and start to put these labels down. And then as we like share little tidbits with people, they're like, wait, whoa. I was just talking about this with a friend. Like, there is this buzz around it. And so I feel excited to hear from other people that we bring in, and to dive more specifically. We're talking very general right now, but like, this can get nitty gritty on a lot of different levels about what it touches and how, you know, and what that does to community.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like to your point of sharing it with people, and people are like, oh, this reminds me of this and this. And I've already seen like a handful of people that know that we're embarking on this journey, reflecting to us, like adopting the language. Like, this just happened where we had shared another pillar of this, which is the idea of pedestalizing people, and how putting people, whether it's like a celebrity or a politician or a friend that you think is really, really good at something, you can put them up on a pedestal, and how like pedestals can be dehumanizing. And because you're seeing yourself as like lesser and them more. And it's just something we will unpack. There's a lot of juiciness there. But this person said to me, like, I got to work on like not pedestalizing so-and-so. And I just went, sure. And what if that part of you is just like for you to like hold and observe? Oh, look, I wonder why I'm doing that. I wonder, like, does that just feel like fun? And I really like this musician. You know, it's like, there isn't any good or bad. So it's this, okay, we have this framework and we have this language. And also, can all of these parts just be there for us to observe? Oh, look, there, I did it again. And I'm not good or bad. I'm just human. It's like, it's all welcome. The whole spectrum is welcome.
It's an exhale. It's expansive. It feels a lot more of that expansive living that I want, where I'm not afraid of those parts of me. And that gives me freedom to make mistakes, which gives me freedom to try new things, which gives me freedom to put myself out there in a way, you know. And that doesn't always mean it's received well, but I have that internal freedom. Like, I can hold my own space in that way too.
Yes.
Feels really nice.
When you said that, I just realized I am so afraid. Like, here we are talking about it and unpacking it. And the reality is, like, this is so scary to be seen in the full spectrum of all that I am. And I love that this has become, like, we're opening this up to be, like, you and I embarking on this journey, inviting other people, because we get to witness each other. And we get to reflect back to each other our goodness and all of the the humanity that we hold. And it's like, I just felt like I needed to acknowledge, like, ooh, I'm trying to actually be really good right now.
Totally.
Like, because I'm terrified,
Totally.
like, and there's, that's where it's like in the nitty gritty of the conversation. Of course, we want to be excellent at what we're doing and hold a space for this conversation, but also, like, I'm afraid of being XYZ, whatever, and losing belonging with you, with anyone listening. And
yeah, it feels good just to name it.
Yeah.
I think that's where, like you mentioned, that we're spiritual people. And I think that's where we can get into like the high and low levels of this, like what it means to be human, and not trying to make those things good or bad. Like being in a human body is sometimes just like hard. It hurts and it's tiring and the world's on fire and it just feels terrible sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And that's like kind of that low level, like being a human's hard, And then there's this higher level that's like being a human is like amazing and magical. And like,
So
what
magical.
even is this body? I mean, we could get all like in our spiritual headspace about it, but there's this higher level of like goodness, like rich, deep goodness, on that spectrum. And not trying to say like, oh, when I'm feeling that part that's like, oh, being in a body's hard, being a human's hard. That's not bad either. Like, so when we even just name like, oh, I'm scared. I'm scared because this is risky and it's a big thing and we're taking time and it matters to us. So then it becomes scary. That part isn't any less important or beautiful or needed than the part that's like, this is important work and we're stepping into something big. They're existing at the same time and they kind of step forward at different times. And we are learning on the spot really how to be like, hi part, like, okay, that's good. That's how I'm feeling right now. Yeah. It's just, it feels, I said, it just feels like an exhale and it feels expansive. And so much of my life was spent feeling in ways trying to keep myself really small because I just didn't want to be in trouble, didn't want to be bad, didn't want to be whatever the thing was. And so you kind of realize how little actually mostly people are looking at your life. We're kind of like putting our lives out there to be looked at in a way, right? But there's this, like, we're all doing the best we can in that moment. Yeah. And that's where the inner work gets to move outward. If I can't look at myself as a human who's having a human experience that has highs and lows, that has the full spectrum of that, then it's really hard for me to hold when you're having that experience if I haven't done it for myself. And so we're learning and we get to practice it. We do it all the time with each other. And that's where I feel like the era of collaboration and this being together is so important. That's why it was so easy for me to jump on because I was like, wait, this is you in your closet. I think about it sometimes and I'm like, what an isolating experience. You're talking about how risky it is to put down the label of being good and there's no one around you like looking in your eyes going like, but you're still
witnessing
here. The witnessing. Yeah. The witnessing's a big part.
Yeah. Like I giggle when I go in my closet now, like I could have done it. It would have been fine, but I'm so glad to be like, we're witnessing each other doing a hard thing like right now in real time. And yeah, a story popped into my head of a way that like you showed up for me. I just want to like share it here. Just because like, yeah, to tie it into what you're saying though, it's like, it could be tempting to be like, yeah, the lowest of the low of being a human is, I hate my body, it hurts, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, instead of, oh no, I'm a human, I will accept my body because I'm so spiritual. It's like, no, like, how about you bitch to your friend for a bit about like how much pain you're feeling, and your friend gets to go, oh, that makes sense. It's hard to have a body. And then you're like, okay, now I'm not alone and I'm connected and I can keep going because I feel held and witnessed and I belong and I'm held in the full spectrum of me. And that leads me to the story of, yeah, like what I mentioned before. I was in like a really hard season recently and it felt too heavy and I was struggling mentally. And also I was showing up with incredible strength because that's just what the situation required of me. And I was getting a lot of feedback like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like, this is amazing. Like, you're doing such a good job. It makes sense that it was you that like was on the front line, you know. And like, to be clear, I really appreciated like people championing me and like encouraging me to keep going. But I was like, I'm drowning and I feel not okay. And it felt like in certain moments it wasn't okay that I didn't feel okay because my strength was being so praised. And I really leaned into our friendship at that time, which for me felt really vulnerable and risky. Mm-hmm. I tend to have these experiences, and then when I get coffee with a friend at a later date, like then tell you. So,
polish it up.
Polish it up, yeah. Or sometimes crumble then, you know. Yeah. But I've just felt that invitation from you and just the way that you are and the way you carry yourself and the way that you are. I witness you with like all of your other people. Like there is this invitation to just be human. And there's this one, like as I was just in the thick of it and I just was like drowning, it was too heavy. There was a text you sent me that was like, so it just came from you, just flowed out. It was just like whatever. And to me, it like stopped me in my tracks and made me cry because it was, even now I associate it with Good Girl Gone Human. Mm-hmm. But I was just in the depths of that like super heavy place. And you said, you are an absolute badass and the most fragile thing. Treat yourself as both. And that permission to just like keep showing up because I had to, mm-hmm. acknowledging I had to, and that I was a badass in doing so. And I do have gifts and I can't, well, all the good stuff. But for you to see like, and oh my goodness, how fragile are you right now? I felt like the wholeness of my humanity in that situation was held. And there was room for me to fall apart because how much sense would that make considering what I'm carrying? And so I just wanted to bring that story in of like how I felt witnessed in my full humanity and held and not alone. And to thank you for that.
Yeah, that became like a conversation after because you told me how much it impacted you. And it did just kind of flow out of me like it's just the thing I was feeling at the time. But then reading it back, it was like, whoa. And I think I've said to you, it's like, how many times did I need to hear that? You know, I've gone through seasons where people have been, you know, praising my strength. I don't know how you do it. Whatever the things are. And you're like, well, I do it because I have to, but thanks, like you're saying. And I was like, oh, I needed to hear like, yes, you're a badass. And so tender, you know, I mean, and on the brink of not feeling like that. And
like,
so,
don't you see the cracks though?
Yeah, the cracks are cracking, you know, and it's just like, I think it became like such a breath of fresh air, a picture of what this looks like and kind of like packaged it all up for us. Like, we don't have to try to be good. Yeah, even in friendship, we're going to unpack that too. But just what does it mean to be a good friend? And we got to experience in real time the work like playing out, you know, and reflecting it back to each other. And so, oh, that's like really sweet though. Yeah. You remember that and that it mattered to you. And
yes, so much.
It feels important, you know?
Yeah.
That happened and that now on this side, when we've been in this frequency so deeply, it's not all head, you know, like it's not just this heady knowledge, like, okay, like we're learning and we're doing and all the fundamentalism we said can come up. And it's like, wait, I want to like feel this in my body. I want to see this in my life, in my friendships, in my relationships, in my parenting, in all these places, you know. Can it leave my head and like be part of who I am, you know, like being a human, you know?
Mm-hmm. And like partnering with this frequency really felt like kind of like, all right, buckle up. Like I was being initiated left and right into this work. And so I'm really excited that we created this space to really share all that we've come across and share our journey with it. And I'm really excited it's turned into a collaboration and that we're inviting whatever humans out there want to join us in this journey, because here's the thing, we will show up here every single time and try to be really, really good. And it, it's like a journey and a process, and it touches everything, like you said.
And I think it will be helpful for us to see like the community that forms around this.
I'm so excited.
And that's why it feels so important. We could sit in my house and your house and talk about this the same way we are now. What we're excited about is this elevation of it to the community and to the community that forms around people who do see themselves in this story in whatever way and feel ready. Because you might, I feel like we knew about some of this stuff long before we were ready to even consider the idea of putting that label down. I mean, we pick it up all the time, even still. And so wherever people are at in their journey, that they get to like come along with us too. And just like even getting that feedback and letting it grow and expand beyond us into like our community, and welcoming people in feels like the next right thing,
Yes. And to let any like potential audience out there know, like, all of you is welcome here. And if you are listening to this and resonating with this, we want to know, like, where do you see yourself in this journey? And we're just really excited to keep unpacking it and bring more and more guests to talk about different podcasts. And like the ongoing conversation is just going to keep getting richer and richer. And with that, I would like to let the people know, the humans out there, that we have all the social media stuff, because I'm like, we want to connect with you. Like, we really do. We got all the Instagrams and the TikToks and
all the Instagrams,
all of them. And you can find us on YouTube too if you like your podcast that way. And so excited to be starting this journey with you, Kristina.
You too. Yeah, I think it's going to be really special and important and fun and hard and like all the good things. And so I hope you follow us, at Good Girl Gone Human. That's what we are.
At Good Girl Gone Human.
That's us.
That's us.
So humans, remember, you are an absolute badass and the most fragile thing. Treat yourself as both.
Bye.